Okay guys, welcome back to Primitive Mycology. This video is a standalone video entirely dedicated to the nutritional profiles of different supplements that we use in our media formulations for mycology. And I'm going to go a little bit into training cultures for certain substrates. This is not very well planned, as I like to shoot from the hip. I figure if I know the information, then I know it. If I don't, I don't. I did write down a few things on the whiteboard, and that's just because a few of the supplements that I, as well as many other people, use, sometimes they don't have nutritional profiles on the package. So then, you've got to go to Google, Google Scholar. I've got some books that also go over, entire nutritional profiles of like tons of foods and grains and stuff. I'm a nerd, but I enjoy it. Anyways, guys, okay, first off, there's hundreds of media formulations. Pretty much anything that is carbohydrate rich, protein rich, which proteins convert to nitrogen. That's a process that I don't 100% understand the full, chemistry process of. But I do know from experience and from lots and lots and lots of reading that there's a direct correlation between your protein content and your in nitrogen output. That is probably something that Ed Grand could answer so much better than me. For the purpose of this video, though, we're just going to focus on the basic idea that proteins do convert into usable nitrogen throughout this process. Anyways, the wide array of nutrition sources have a very, very wide variety of nutritional profiles. So if we want to keep a culture, aggressive and, able to colonize multiple types of substrates, grains, efficiently, for like production and things like that, it is worthwhile to change up your media to keep your mycelium developing the enzymes needed to break down those different nutrition sources. Also, those different nutrition sources, as far as like your grain and your substrate, they also change, the outcome of your actual end production. Some cultures respond better to certain grains and certain substrates than others. With gourmets, this is food. In the end, we're looking for a good nutritional profile, which is why, we don't grow on coir. Coir's great for other things, but with those other things, you're not really looking for a nutritional profile or health and wellness. You're looking for something entirely different, and that's perfect. Everything has its own purpose. But in the instance for me, growing gourmets, I want to grow on a substrate, that's going to allow that mushroom to uptake lots of nutrients, vitamins, minerals that are going to make that in mushroom very good for my and other people's health and wellness. I don't want to grow a fungus that is nutritionally devoid, lacking nutrients. I want to grow something that's healthy. If we didn't want nutrients, we would just all eat cardboard, right? Anyways, one of my last videos, I did a couple volumes of some super, super simple, low-tech outdoor cultivation. And one of the people that I look up to, the most, that I think really highly of, Dr. Ed Grand, Um, he left a comment. I hope I didn't offend you, Ed, because like that was not, I went into a little rant on, different media formulations and how to, or how I, keep my cultures from developing enzyme blindness. Um, and, the video was supposed to be about, the preparation of your straw for this cultivation. And I've noticed through my weekly recaps that my longer videos where I go into and start explaining like some of what makes things tick, the mechanics of this, um, people don't really respond to it. My short videos that are like 5 minutes long, I get tons and tons of views. At the point of videos like 25, 30 minutes, I'm usually like 1/10 of the views, which is why I made the joke at the end. And sorry, Ed, I'm not very good at jokes, man. So, what was the joke to me I guess didn't come out like it. And again, I hope I didn't offend you, but I said at the end, like, I'm gonna quit talking about the rant because I doubt really very many people care. And I was like a joke. I mean, that part is true, but I joked and said, I don't care either. But since it's my channel, I'll do what I want. I'll talk about it anyway. It it was a joke, guys. Um, I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but anyways, I didn't want to make that video that was for beginner cultivators, into something like extensive, because then, those new people that come in that just want to learn how to grow a few mushrooms on a straw bale or something, outside with like no knowledge, no effort, no, that might chase some of them off, like I didn't want to, I don't want to chase newcomers off. I don't want to overload nobody. So here is a separate video just for that. Anyways, let's get to this. So, okay, when it comes to like different nutritions that we use, okay, pretty much everybody knows what corn dextrose is. This stuff, I mean, this is so widely used, and there's a good reason. I mean, it's a good, clean sugar source. Um, it's really pretty devoid of anything. It's basically just sugars. It's corn sugar. Um, you know, per 20 grams of this, you're getting 18 grams of sugars. The rest is basically, I mean, it's just like devoid powder that has, sugar source. This is fantastic to use. Oh man, I've pretty much replaced brown sugar. I used to use brown sugar, sometimes sorghum syrup, um, and honey. I don't anymore. I primarily use this. Occasionally, I'll use a little bit of honey for the sugar source, but this dextrose powder works really well. And I always use it in conjunction with, a carbohydrate or protein source. And always in like lower amounts. I shoot for 2% to 2.5% nutrition in pretty much all the media plates that I pour. Occasionally, as I talked about in another video, I will, if I'm having trouble waking something up from long-term storage, I'll pour just a few plates at some pretty high nutrition, like 4%. And as soon as I see that first bit of growth, I'll pull it off and put it back on a proper plate. Those super high nutrition plates, you can definitely grow your cultures out on them, but I have found in my 6 years experience that keeping things on higher nutrition plates like that is not good for you in the long run. I don't want to go into that right now. I want to talk about these nutrition sources, but in my experience, I've watched several cultures start developing enzyme blindness, like almost like a mycelial sugar diabetes, in my experience, I've noticed things that I just don't think are productive, unless, if you're going to go back to spore, every 3 grows, it probably doesn't matter at that point, because you're you're completely refreshing the cell line so often that, you know, yeah, you could definitely get away with it. But if you want to grow the same culture for a long time, you know, I'm talking about like years, you know, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of blocks, you know, thousands of pounds of mushrooms, um, you're you're better to go with like a 2.5% nutrition rate. You could go lower than that, but going lower than 2%, I've also noticed that like the density of your mycelium is just not that good. It's way too thin and wispy. And then when you send that to grain, it doesn't have as much nutrition to leap off of that agar onto your grain and take off. I've noticed like 1% nutrition plates, um, the mycelium will just rip across the plate and it's ready really quick. But the leap off time from the agar to the grain is a lot slower than if I do like 2% nutrition. I found that that's like 2 to 2.5% seems to be, for me, might be different from you, seems like that's like kind of like the magic number for me. Anyways, let's move on. And as you see, I'm nowhere special. I'm actually sitting in my bedroom because I was thinking about this. It's like, I don't know, probably like 11 or 11:30 at night, and I wanted to put this out because I was starting to edit and clean up the audio on the third volume, you know, the inoculation of the straw bags, you know, for the low-tech outdoor grows. And, you know, I run across the part where I said that I was going to do this. So here we are. Here's another nutrition source. Nutritional yeast flakes. And sorry if you guys hear the fan kicking on. You know, I can't help that. I'll clean up the audio. But anyways, you know, these are fantastic as an additive. Like, I wouldn't ever do the base of my media recipe with these, but these nutritional yeast flakes provide protein, B vitamins, sodium, you know, calories, carbohydrates. They provide potassium is another thing that's important. Um, Pretty much most of the B vitamins, which um, I've never seen any proof with gourmets, but cordyceps really benefit from potassium and B vitamins. Um, I watched a video and done a little research, read a couple papers about the cordyceps cultivation in India, and it completely changed my cordyceps game with the addition of vitamin B6, B12, and potassium. Very small amounts, but it, you know, rather than the cordyceps being little short clubs, um, you know, I've been able to grow them literally where they're touching the top of the jar. Um, you know, that's not very normal for cordyceps unless you are privy to that information. And I've seen that a lot of people must have not found what I did. So I'm positive that there was some effect with other gourmets. You know, the main thing that it affects with cordyceps is, you know, often when they start to get really tall, you know, like half the jar tall, they'll start leaning over. And eventually they'll be laying down, and you either got to pick them now or they rot. You know, like that's kind of like the two options that I've run across. Again, all of us are different. That's just my experience. But with the addition of potassium, I noticed the rigidity. You know, they didn't want to lean over so much. And then the following grow, which I was growing in cycles this past winter, you know, I usually only grow cordyceps during the cold months because they do better. They're more consistent. And during the summer, I'm doing a lot of stuff outside. There's just a lot going on. So I keep cordyceps to basically like the late fall, the winter, and the early spring. But then the addition of the B vitamin, I noticed how much taller they could grow. And it actually sped up the growth a little bit. So the problem that, you run into is if they get too tall, they'll start leaning over. Then it's like it grows over, or you let them rot, and then you can't. I mean, you can't give those to people. Period. You got to throw them away. Do you want to throw them away? I don't, so I just don't want that to happen. You either got to pick them at the right time, or potassium B vitamins really, really changed it up for me. Really benefited a lot. Anyways, that's nutritional yeast. Then you've got pure raw honey. Honey, there's a lot of things that people say about the benefits of honey for people. I don't know if, the antimicrobial properties of honey or any of that transfers to, I doubt it. I doubt it transfers to the mushrooms. But it is a good sugar source. And it's usually, if you get raw honey, it's pretty clean. If you get the shit from like Walmart or the dollar store, it's going to be a mix of Karo syrup and honey, which Karo syrup can be used. I don't have any of that with me because I just stopped using it, period. Nothing wrong with it. I don't like it. I've never been happy with any of the media I've made with it, and I pour a lot of plates. Some people are, I'm sure that there are cultures and species that really thrive on it. Or if you're making liquid culture and all you're feeding your mycelium is just sugar, yeah, you could run plates with that in it and they would respond well to the liquid culture when you made it. And I guess there probably might be a little bit of a benefit, like if you're growing on corn, but why not just use cornmeal? Why not boil cornmeal and use that broth and get everything from that? That's my mindset anyway. I mean, you can do however you want. There's a billion ways to formulate media and a billion ways to grow mushrooms. I'm not here to tell anybody they're wrong, because you're not. If you're learning, even in failure, those are the best lessons, is failures. I learned far more from my failures than I've learned from any book, any person. I mean, when you have a problem that is just like, I guess you could say obsessive compulsive. So like, I have to know why something worked or why something failed. I have to know why something didn't change anything. Like I have to know, So I take notes and I pay attention, and all of my little side projects are completely aside from anything that I'm doing that's productive. And then I often will compare, like, this is what I normally do over here, in that tent. And then here's my experimental tent, or here's just like 2 bags that are set off to the side that I can watch, grow at relatively the same time so I can compare. And am I changing a bunch of stuff at once? Never. Now, if I've run an experiment a couple times, there may be a lot different on the experiment than on the regular, but that experiment, I started somewhere at a baseline and I slowly changed one thing at a time. Just because you can't really learn much if you keep changing too much. The FAFO, fuck around and find out, is a good idea. I think we should all do that. You can't really truly learn if you don't try new things. And yeah, there's a lot of people that are successful that only do things one way and they will never change it. And that's fine too. I'm curious. I'm always looking for something better, more productive, something that makes my culture's lineage go, extend it out longer. Just because, I take gourmets back to spore a lot, and I pheno hunt, or, look for weirdos, look for oddities, like look for a mutation in a multispore, and then I'll clone it, grow it by itself, and often that mutation is not so mutated, it's not competing with other colonies anymore. So you get something a little bit more stable often, but it's still going to be different. And that's the kind of thing you want to, grab spores from. If you're looking for some genetic diversity and say chestnuts, I've got, a little chestnut project going on that has got some absolute weirdos growing on it. It's not that beautiful chestnut flush I'm used to, but that's the point. I want to find something different and then start running that, anyways. Sorry, I get off on my rants. I got so much to think about. I'm always doing many different things. And then you've got soy peptone. There's a lot of people that really, really don't like this stuff. Let's see if the camera can get it. But you guys can see what I am working with here. A lot of people really don't like this stuff. And I absolutely don't like it either in large amounts. I mean, at all. Some people use it for that quick growth, to make liquid culture, colonize quickly. And I don't use it for, I don't use it for that. I've had this for 4 years, and it's still half full. And that's because when I use it, I use 0.1 grams per 500 milliliters. I don't ever use more than that. Mainly because, you'll end up with a pellicle on the top of liquid culture, which I've completely stopped using liquid culture for anything but cordyceps. Cordyceps are a whole different animal. Like, everything you do with them pretty much doesn't apply to anything you do with anything else. If you grow them in the manner that I do. Because cordyceps, you got to use a nutrient broth to hydrate your rice or your oats. You can grow them all on all kinds of different things. I'll blitz up mealworms, or dried crickets in the food processor, and then use that in my nutrient broth. And the nutrient broth has a wide range of stuff, and there's like 100 different formulas you can use for that. And then, because cordyceps overlay so bad and they colonize so rapidly, you don't want to use a small amount of liquid culture, where like anything else you would ever do with mycology, you're going to use like 2 or 3 cc's for a whole bag of grain. Well, with cordyceps, it's like totally different. You're going to use a 1 to 1.2 ratio for your broth, your hydration level, your rice. You cook your rice like that. Then, for like basically every 50 grams dry, which, you're going to use, like, it comes out to like 54s. I don't know the exact numbers right now, but something like that, around like 54, 56 grams of liquid. Well, then, you're a little over 100 grams. Well, at that point, I'm going to use like 8 cc's, 10 cc's in that, pint jar that, is going to end up with like an inch of substrate. You want to keep your substrates real thin with cordy's, like anywhere from like 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half. If you're doing like really big tubs, like I do shoe boxes too of those. Often, I'll do like 1 inch there. Quart jars, 1 inch. I don't use the half-gallon jars because they just can't grow tall enough to make it worth using. I also use a lot of sealable, like that have a rubber seal O-ring gasket, however you want to call it. Food service bowls, like large bowls. Those are probably my favorite to grow cordy's in. Mainly, they're reusable. There's people that buy the polypropylene, like deli containers. Those work well too. I've used them before. But pretty much, like, with your media, you can use lots of this. There's people that do, but I just don't prefer it, and I don't like the outcome. The reason that I would use 0.1 grams of this per 500 milliliters is occasional rotations in media, and also because gourmets, we often do use soy hulls. Some people use oat hulls. I've known people to use beet pulp as their supplement and their master's mix and stuff like that. But this kind of, I've noticed a little bit of a difference, as you rotate through something like that. develop those enzymes. After it's been on this, it will kind of colonize and respond well to your soils, but do you need it? No, absolutely not. So this is just like a rotation, basically. Um, like I said, at 0.1 grams, you can, sure, you can use more. I just don't. Anyways, let's go on to light malt extract. Probably my least favorite supplement. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Sorry, I'm gonna get a drink. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but when I first started growing, this is what, you know, the easiest recipe was. You know, LME, agar. I mean, you can make media like that. You can add yeast to that. You can add the 0.1 of the peptone. You can, you know, you can do any number of things. But I just never really liked the response with this. You know, it's like really run of the mill. And for a long time, you know, my first, I don't know, probably at least a year, maybe two, this is the only kind of media I made. And I started to notice a lot of my cultures were starting to grow not so great because they were tired, you know. That was my fault, not the fault of this. That was my fault. I was not properly storing them long term and constantly going back to that good fresh genetic, you know. And then I'd let them get enzyme blindness, you know, mycelial sugar diabetes, you know. And I started having a lot of mutations, a lot of stuff that was not, I mean, ugly. No one would want to buy, you know, something that looks like garbage, or it doesn't even look like what it's supposed to be. You know, deformed, like gross looking caps. That's not, you know, that's just not good. You know, you can't start or build a business or, you know, a customer base if your mushrooms don't, if they look disgusting, you know, like, not like dirty disgusting or like unhealthy disgusting, just like deformed. That's not, you know, that's just not what I want to do. Anyways, this is a good supplement. I've got, since there's no nutritional profile here, I've got it here. It's at the bottom. Try to give you guys a good look here. There you go. That way you can kind of go back to it if you want. But light malt extract per 100 grams is 310 calories, 4.6 grams of protein, which for a nutrition source is actually really low, you know, when you start looking at some of the other things that we're going to talk about. 74 grams of carbs. So, I mean, basically, this is just empty carbohydrates. There's not really much of anything. 27.5 milligrams of calcium and 306 milligrams of potassium. The potassium is probably what makes this, you know, worth using. The carbs, yes, you absolutely need carbohydrates, you know, in your media. But in today's world, I do use this a little, like in the rotations, but this is not the basis of any media formulation I use. I may add 2 grams of this and, you know, place of something else. You know, or sometimes you know, like say I'm using oatmeal yeast dextrose. Well, maybe the next run I swap out 3 grams of the oatmeal flour that I make for 3 grams of this, just to keep things fresh and, you know, things like that. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's actually a great beginner thing to use, and there's a lot of people who've been doing this even longer than me that still rely on this. That's fine. There's a lot of people too that don't do their own culture management, and they're constantly buying $75 plates from the strain bank, and then just, you know, expanding them out, making spawn. That's the end of it. Buy more plates. Me, I don't do that. You know, I buy plates, I cut up a whole plate, put it into several, still water vials, several slants, and then on a couple of plates that I'm going to start with. And then, all you need is a little tiny piece. That one plate can make like 100 of the next passage number or transfer number for making spawn. Like all you need is a piece like the size of a pin tip to make another plate. So then you get the most out of that, and then you go back to your storage, or you can just keep spending money on plates, or you can buy LC or whatever you want to do. Preferably, I like to maintain my own things. There's times, though, that I may make a mistake or I run something completely out. Yeah, sure. Then you go back and you get, another from the strain bank, But how often do you need to do that? If you manage them right, not very often at all. Next here, since I have this stuff already up here, we're going to go ahead and go on to cornmeal. Hopefully the camera turns that back around when I upload this video. Cornmeal is actually pretty good. Not too bad. Per 150 grams of cornmeal, you're looking at 581 calories. There's some substance there. There's something for the mic to eat, There's also 223 milligrams of potassium, which is, my experience with cordyceps definitely makes a difference. Again, with other gourmets, I don't know, like, I'm sure that it does something, but how much, I don't know if it's even worth thinking about. 11 grams of protein, now you're almost 3 times what LME is with cornmeal. And think about that, how cheap is cornmeal and what's LME cost? If you're doing this a lot, might matter, might not, Also, it's, I could not find the exact numbers for the iron, B6, and magnesium, but it definitely contains a significant enough amount to list. Does that really matter? Probably not, no. Maybe if you're looking for like exacts or like scientific things, yeah, you might want to pay attention to that, but we're not really doing that. We're doing citizen science and we're growing our mushrooms, so like, really matter? No, but the nutritional profile, it is important to think of these things. Like when you're formulating your media, like, what has this mycelium been on? What has it not been introduced to? Or how much, and things like that when you go managing your cultures. Also, like, do you want a sugar diabetic culture that's, starts to mutate as you go out? If you're going back to spore often, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? You grow it on honey, or, you experiment with different medias. You find out what you like, there's so many angles to this that all of them are great. Anybody doing anything in mycology, I think, is fantastic. Although we may have different approaches or different outcomes, different goals, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't share information amongst each other. I think that's how we grow, and the disconnect is real. Like, I don't see anybody having these conversations that I'm putting up here now, and we should be. We should all be learning from each other. We should never get stuck in the same, this is the only way to do it. This is the only way I'm never going to change anything. It's like, well, why? Why not learn something? Like, yes, do what works, absolutely. But why aren't we doing more side projects? Why aren't we seeing the response to different things? Different grains, different substrates. Come on, guys. Join me in this. Next, we have sorghum pith. I get this, the brand is Pit Me. It's actually pretty cheap. Does pretty well. I'm actually been rather impressed with it. The sorghum pith, and that, and the cornmeal. I don't. I've learned through experience not to add that directly to my media. I make a broth from it. I found that, like with the cornmeal, um, one time I did like 20 plates, one 500 milliliter bottle of that, and then like a light malt extract, potato dextrose blend, um, next to it, and I poured like 40 plates of that, and then I had a couple other like basic media formulations I had to make up my 100 plates. I always do 5 bottles. I think I talked about this in another video. Pour 20 plates per bottle. Whatever is left after 20 plates stays in that bottle, because I want consistency. I want this the same every time, and I don't want to have 23 plates of one thing and then 17, or I want 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. Even if I'm pouring all the same media that day, I want 20 plates from each bottle, and I'm throwing the rest out. I'm like that. Do I need to be? No, no, not at all. Anyways, moving on. The sorghum. But back to that. The plates I poured with the cornmeal that went directly into it, every single plate, but like 2 or 3 out of 20, went bad and ended up with little yeast spots all over it. And I cooked all 5 bottles together, all of them, the exact same way for 1 hour, like I always do. Every bottle, all 4 other bottles, poured perfectly, not a single bad plate. I cooled them all the same. I mean, I did everything the exact same. All the plates came out of the same large box, a 500. I mean, there was zero difference, and almost all the plates went bad. There wasn't like bacteria or fungus or anything. It got yeast spots, and I'm like, what? Maybe I got a bad sleeve of plates. So then, to be sure, I made another batch of that media, the exact same. Poured 20 more plates, 15 of them went bad. And I thought, huh, I don't know what's going on there. I couldn't figure it out. Well, I thought, being as, I'm going to pause for a second. Sorry. I thought, being as, they went bad like that twice in a row, and that many of them, like, there has to be something going on. So I poured, I ended up pouring agar all day to try to figure this out. So I took another sleeve of plates out of that same box, and I made just basic potato dextrose agar, with a little yeast. Often when I do PDA, I always add a little yeast. Same thing with oatmeal. I always add just 1 gram of nutritional yeast. But I poured them, no problem. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe it's like a spot in the hood or something. Like maybe my filter needs changed, or my pre-filter's like disgusting or something. Like maybe I need to blow off the front of the filter with air duster. And so I took a couple plates and I laid them out across in front of it, a few further back, and I left them all open for 2 minutes. Never at any time are you going to have your one plate open for longer than 2 minutes. I mean, I don't really test any longer than that. If you got a single plate open for 5 minutes, you must be taking a nap, or you should have left that plate closed. I mean, the time that it takes me to do transfers and stuff is very, 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 very short. So anything past 2 minutes, I don't really get concerned about. Well, I had pretty much consistent results. There was no spot that was blowing like bad air or weak air, nothing. I thought, man, that's weird. So, I thought, what if I, kind of like when you just throw potatoes or you throw rice in water and boil it to get that broth, to make media. I boiled it like that, and then strained it. The following day I made another batch because I was totally obsessed with why what is the problem here? Like, is it the cornmeal? Like, is there something that I just can't kill in the pressure cooker? I boiled it to extract, made that broth, made my media, no problems. All the plates poured good. Still don't know. I just know I don't use it like that. you know, never even worry about trying that again. And the sorghum pith, it's like kind of chunky granular. You could probably blitz it in food processor, turn it into a flour, and it worked pretty well. But I do the same thing. I boil it, strain it, and then use the broth. Um, I yeah, I just makes no sense to me. But I know for sure in that experiment, I know what way worked and what way didn't, and I know that other things were working just fine. So there's something I still don't know. Maybe one day I'll do another experiment and try to figure it out. Anyways, sorghum per 100 grams, you've got 329 calories, which is a little bit, for it to eat on. 11 grams of protein, which is a pretty good count. Which I just left a note that there's a direct correlation between protein and the conversion of nitrogen, or there's something there. Again, there's way better people to ask about that chemistry, that organic chemistry than me. Again, like Ed Grant is a super smart man. He may have some much better insight on the why of that than me. It's got 72 grams of carbohydrates, which is pretty decent. And then it's got, several of the B vitamins, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, B6, and folate. These are all beneficial things. I know that cordyceps really likes this stuff. I've had some pretty good results swapping this out for other nutrients that I use in my broth. I've also used the whole pith without blitzing it or extracting it in my rice media, and have had some pretty good results. Anyways, moving on. There's also cornstarch. This I've used before in like the place of like replace potato flakes with it. I was not very impressed with the results, but it did work. And that probably comes down to how little I've worked with this as a nutrient source. I prefer the cornmeal extraction if I'm going to use something like this, but it did work. And maybe with some playing around with the formulation, maybe I could find the right amount that may perform better, because there is definitely something to say about your ratios of your sugar to carbohydrate to starch sources. I've noticed a lot of big differences. And maybe in another video, I'll really go into those in my specific media formulations, and maybe, maybe look back at some of my notes and put together a very directed video. Because I take a ton of notes. I think that's very, very important. That's how I decide how I'm going to formulate my media for different things. Is, looking back at my notes, and, also things you remember, like you see certain little cues and different things. It's like, hey, you know what's going on there, good and bad. Sometimes like before something completely shits the bed, you'll get like little cues, like something might not smell yet, this, a bad bag, of grain, like, you punctured a hole in it, you popped a hole in it, or it's got a bad gusset, or there's a billion things, or say I, got in a little bit of a hurry and I underhydrated a little bit of grain and it doesn't sterilize completely and it shits the bed. Well, there's always going to be like little cues and stuff. Like if you really pay attention before it ever starts to smell bad, there will be little cues. Even if the grain isn't slimy, from like bacillus, like, bacterial wet spot, that, even if it isn't slimy yet or doesn't smell, like just the sheen on it, how the mycelium grows around it. You know, when it finds like certain little areas that it doesn't want to colonize yet, sometimes that's just because it's still colonizing and you're impatient. But other times, you know, sometimes I've noticed like the grain looks a little opaque, you know, like a little dull, you know, hydrated, you know, it's a little translucent, but like the outside of it, instead of having, you know, like a basic coloring, you know, like the normal coloring, will look a little off. And then the grain, you know, doesn't get colonized as quickly. And when it does, that's when it shits the bed. That's then it starts smelling. It's like I seen that 3 days ago before it ever even, you know, before there was ever any guarantee or anything like that, short of me cutting the bag open and throwing a piece of grain on a plate. You know, I noticed little something like that. I'm like, oh, I bet that bag goes bad, you know, almost bet. So then you take a black marker and you put an asterisk on the bag. And sure enough, a couple days later, it smells foul. Or you start noticing wet spot and you're like, I got you. Yeah. You know, it's just little things like that. When you really pay attention, that obsessive compulsive disorder is really beneficial. Anyways, okay, so let's go on to oatmeal. Basic quick oats. These are probably my favorite nutrition source of anything. I started messing around with these, I don't know, like 6 months ago or something like that. And I didn't really have them figured out yet, you know. But over a course of a couple months, I've really dialed in a couple media formulations that I just really prefer. And again, I'm going to make another video that goes into all, you know, I have a whole little notebook full of my different media formulations for as I rotate through, and I take little stupid notes and say, oh, well, you know, I noticed the place did this, or it did this when I, you know, threw it to grain, you know, it didn't leap off fast, or, you know, I take all kinds of little goofy notes, and then I'll change just one thing, just a little bit, make a little adjustment, and then run those, see how they do. And I take notes on like how different species do on certain medias. Because as we know, in the wild, you know, different species naturally want to eat different things. They respond differently to different medias. So you just, it takes 2 seconds, 10 seconds at most, if you got to go get the notebook and a pen, you know, to jot down a little note. What's that hurt? You know, like, definitely doesn't hurt anything. It'll probably help you later. But anyways, these guys are in beast mode, okay? Per 40 grams. So we're just going to double all this and we'll be close to the 100-gram mark. So I'll put this up there. And then I'll go through state what it is and then double. Okay, 150 calories per 40 grams. So per 80 grams, it's 300 calories. That's a good bit for the mycelium to eat. You know, also, you know, things that are important here, you know, carbohydrates, 27 grams, okay? Double that. And you're still a little bit short of that 100-gram mark, but 27 and 27 is 54. 54 grams of carbohydrates in 80 grams of this. I mean, that's a pretty solid nutrition source, man. That's kicking. You know, and then you go down and you look at like iron, potassium, thiamine, magnesium. You know, there's 40 milligrams of magnesium. Double that, 80 milligrams of magnesium. Think about like pouring Gallon gum plates that need magnesium to set. Yes, you would have to play around with the formula a little bit, but what if you could get the majority of the magnesium you need to set them plates from something as simple as a cheap thing of oats? And let me tell you, 1 cup of these blitzed into flour in the food processor, 1 cup filled a pint jar. You know, you know, that's, everything takes up different amounts of spaces when it's, you know, processed. But I mean, that lasts like a substantial amount of time. Takes maybe 5 minutes. It takes longer to wash the damn food processor than it does to do this. And now you've got your oat flour for quite some time. Um, I love these. One thing I will say, I don't know, like I can pour media and I often will color my plates, from batch to batch so I know where it came from. And I have again, I take notes and it's like this color was this day, blah, 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 this media, that, all kinds of different stuff. And these, I don't know why, but they seem to turn no matter what color food coloring I put in that media. It will start out, I just poured a bunch, purple, sky blue, and dark green, okay? Well, I didn't realize that they were going to change the color of everything. All of the media, after it cooked, came out forest green. All of it. The purple, the sky blue, I don't know why. It just does that. And then I can take any other nutrition source I have, color the plates, cook, pour, and they're the right color. What it is that seems to turn them green, I don't know. Maybe it's my food coloring. Maybe I need to go to like gel food coloring or powdered food coloring, for the plates, for this anyway. But yeah, that's just a little note, something to think about. I'm going to do the grits last. And then we have potato flakes. These are really, really popular, PDA. See if the camera can get that there. Okay, so 22 grams. Okay, so we're going to have to multiply everything by 4 to get close. That way we can kind of compare with everything else. Okay, so we've got 80 calories. Times that by 4, that's 320. Okay, that's a fair amount of, substance for the mycelium to eat. Okay, and then we go down and we look at protein. 2 grams. Times that by 4, you have 8. Okay, that's not too bad. That's pretty decent. Calcium, 10 milligrams. So you got 40. Okay, not bad. It contains some iron. I have no idea if iron matters shit. I don't know. That's something that, taking notes, maybe taking just an iron supplement, pure iron, and doing 3 or 4 different kinds of media and putting it in one, in 10 gram increment, or 1 gram increments, or 0.1, just, probably start at like 0.0, 0.1 or 0.2 and just see what it does. Take notes, make a small change on that, do it again. These projects, things like that take a year, 2 years to really see some real results. Not like, oh, the initial results, but it could have been a fluke. No, you need to do that experiment several times. This is what makes this fun. Like I don't know. It's fun. Potassium, 250 milligrams. Okay, times it by 4, that's 1,000 milligrams of potassium. That may have something to do with why people use this so much. Don't know. More things that we as a group need to start studying, I notice lots of things. I take, lots of notes. I'm thinking about all these things, and I'm constantly doing little projects. And again, I'll go through some of my notes in another video on these media formulations, things that I've learned. But as a whole, we need to be having these conversations. We need to be talking to each other about this. Make a video, like talk to me, like let's see what you know, like what have you noticed? Ideas, yeah, let's do it. And then we have my absolute favorite. I mean, well, maybe not my absolute favorite, but grits. I mean, who in the hell would think to blitz grits and use them to pour agar? I would have never thought of this. And I was in the cabinet one morning, gonna make myself a bowl of oatmeal, for breakfast. And I seen the grits, and the nutrition label was facing me, and I thought, Huh, there's quite a bit in there. Okay, so this is based on 37 grams, so um, we'll still be close. We'll be a little over. We'll just multiply by 3. 33, would be the 3, to get 100 grams, but 37 will be close enough. Okay, let me give you a shot at this. If the light will cooperate. There we go. Okay, so we got 130 calories times 3. Okay, we got 390. That's pretty decent. That's a pretty solid nutrition source. Carbohydrates, 29. Okay, times 3. You got like almost 90 grams of carbs. I mean, that's killer, man. That's probably higher than anything else I'm using here. And what are we really usually looking for? Carbohydrates, starch, sugar for media. I mean, that's primarily it, other than, exposing the mycelium to different things so it, can respond better later on. Okay? That's that's killer, man. I mean, like, I was actually really impressed with the first media I made from this. And I've got a plate I'll run through here in a minute. Um, then we come down to total sugars less than a gram. This is like a pure carbohydrate source. So think of like this with yeast and dextrose. You play around with the recipe enough, and I was like really impressed with it. I'm probably gonna start using a little more. And then, you look at protein, 3 grams. Okay, so you got basically 9 grams in 100. That's a pretty high protein content. I mean, most of these nutrients have blown light malt extract out of the water. It is, please don't think that I'm against light malt extract, because I'm not at all. I've used it a lot, and I still do use it, like in smaller amounts combined with other things. But, that's, that's solid right there. I mean, this sorghum and oats are probably, or not probably, they are my favorite, meaty supplements. Also, the vitamin range in this is just wild. Like, there's actually quite a bit of iron in these. Again, I don't know. Who knows? Potassium, 50 milligrams. So that's 150 milligrams of potassium in this. What we got to know. We got to start learning, more about this, because the papers that I read, and I'll see, I probably still have them downloaded. And if I do, I will put a link in the description. If I don't, I will find them again. And in a future video, I will put a link in the description with the findings from some mycologists and scientists in India that lent, benefits to cordyceps with potassium and B vitamins. I'm sure there's some effect, when we're looking at gourmets and we're looking for nutritional profiles, or, the ability to develop certain, compounds. I do specifically remember that the cordycepin, the levels of cordycepin did go up with their testing and correlation to potassium. How much, I can't remember, but it was their study, not mine. I was just impressed and, mirrored it. You can learn from anyone. Again, how much it really matters, does it affect yield? Probably not at all. But like, think about like things like cordyceps, reishi, lion's mane, turkey tail, maitake. Those are mushrooms that people often use for extractions. And there's, many others that have some wonderful health benefits. Are they cures? No. Is this advice? No, absolutely not. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying things that I've found in literature, you know, um, cited works on clinical studies, you know, and different things like that. Could these things have something to do with the production of those things? Maybe. Um, Pretty positive in cordyceps it does. But does that apply? Cordyceps are a whole different animal, you know? So this is why we need to be studying this. This is why we should be doing experiments. You know, it's meticulous to set up a proper experiment, but it's not like it's that much extra work. If you're growing them anyway, how hard is it to make 1 or 2 blocks or a couple bags of grain or just a couple plates that are a little different, you know? I don't know. Think about it. Then we look at, like, you know, basically some B vitamins here, you know, riboflavin, niacin, folate, decent amounts, you know, nothing like super exciting. But again, I was rather impressed. I'm like, who knew, you know? And that's something like, I think I remember hearing Ed say once on one of his lives that, you know, sometimes when he goes to the grocery store, you know, he will be looking at things like, wonder if I could make media from that. I wonder if this will work for my collagen, you know? And it's like, that's intelligent, man. That's smart. I do a lot of the same things, you know? Now more than ever, I'm looking at nutritional profiles and, you know, like, could this be used? What would I have to do to use it? Would I need to, you know, extract it in a broth? Or, I mean, do I need to blitz it into a flour? You know, can I use it whole? Like, how can I make this work? Because I want that nutrition in this plate. You know, I want to see how this works. I think if we don't expand, that we can only be stuck where we are. And that's okay. It really is. I want to know. Tell me if you guys want to know. Now, this video is, I see, a little over an hour. And I'm going to cut this one here right after I show you a couple, you know, it's nothing exciting. I make some of my own, you know, little broths and stuff that I will add in small amounts, you know, to my media. I said something wrong on one of my other videos, talking about training mycelium with different broths and, you know, different, it's basically extract, broth, grain water, straw water, you know, whatever. Talking about kind of like slowly training mycelium to eat certain things. Well, in that video, I collected some straw water. Well, I took that straw water and then I threw that in a pan with some rice, just 10 grams of rice, 10 grams of sorghum pith, 10 grams of oatmeal, and this also had probably 10 grams of potato flakes for 1,000 milliliters. Okay. Well, brought it to a boil, let it simmer for, I don't know, 30 minutes. It might have been an hour. You know, 30 minutes to an hour is usually enough to pull out what you need. Strained it off, you know, and then jarred it and throw it in the refrigerator. I said, though, you could add 100 milliliters of this and, you know, in your water and, you know, for your media. That, I mean, you probably could. You would really, really have to lower a lot, you know, your other nutrition sources, and you have to play with that. I said it wrong. I do 10 milliliters. For certain things, if I'm basically just wanting to run almost entirely this broth, I would do like 30 milliliters. Why I said 100, I don't know. I'm sure there's a million different things that I've used 100 milliliters of something for something else. Who knows? But primarily 10 milliliters. That's enough to introduce your mycelium to it and develop them enzymes. If you really, really want to train it completely to straw, I wouldn't have put, you know, as much of the other stuff, and I would have done more of the straw water and then I would use like 30 milliliters in a 500 milliliter batch. But I just want to introduce, I'm going to train a couple cultures to this specifically. And I'm going to grow them on straw. I've also got, oh, a busted jar. Look at that. Came out of the freezer. Well, this one's no good now. This was cornmeal, rice, and coffee, extract that I obviously won't be using anymore. And then this is one that I kind of like the results from. I had a pineapple, a fresh one, that I ate the pineapple, but the like the skin, the outside, that hard like peel of the pineapple, I chunked it all up, threw it in a pot with some cornmeal, rice, and sorghum, and I extracted it and was actually rather impressed. Because the pineapple skin has little bits of pineapple left in it, plus whatever that outside roughage is. It actually done pretty well. I was like, you can literally make it out of anything. Would I be using pineapple to grow mushrooms? No, but it was interesting. Oh, look at that piece of glass. I've got here some plates. This is a pulmonarius that over the summer was, a dicarion that I had introduced a mono to, or don't quote me on that, it could have been multispore. I've done quite a bit of stuff with pulmonarius, but it turned out really, really beautiful. Ended up being a scalloped, scalloped edge, and looked like it kind of had like little white teeth in the scallops. It was really pretty. So I cloned it. Why wouldn't you? This was actually the third clone off that cluster. I cloned several mushrooms off of, it wasn't all one cluster, I guess, but it was all from one run, one grow. This was my favorite one, and I really want to grow this on the straw bales. I rarely grow on straw. I pretty much primarily masters mix, but those little easy fun projects that are like zero input after you get them set, no utilities, basic, you don't have to worry about the environment. You hang it in the pine trees and you put a sprinkler over there, you spray it with the hose once a day. The pine needles hold a lot of moisture. I was actually impressed the first time I'd done that, because I've done hanging straw bags in a greenhouse, and I've also done them just sitting on the ground, cut holes in them when it's time to fruit them. And it's like a fun project. I mean, anybody can do it. It's a great way to teach people, to introduce them to mycology. Or if you have limited equipment, that's why I made them videos. I'm going to train this to grow on straw. Also, there is, here's a pohu oyster clone, that I, rather enjoy the pohu mushroom. This is, I cloned it specifically for training it to grow on straw. I'm going to use that broth and just a couple transfers, and then I'll put it in long-term storage after it's been developed and responds well to the straw water. And I'm going to grow this on straw. It'll be fun. I'll take a couple little short clips and put them together in one video, and then do another straw project. I got a bunch of those bags and a whole shit ton of straw. And then here's these plates are actually all overgrown now, but this is main cap and stem super scallop oyster. This is grown on oatmeal yeast dextrose. The rate of growth was real nice. It grew up pretty fast and aggressively, and actually responded really good to this. And now it's like totally overgrown, starting to get a little concentric, and it looks like it might even be getting ready to pin on the plate. That was 10-2, and it's, getting ready to pin on the plate. I think it's like Halloween, so 29 days, and it's gonna pin on the plate. That's pretty. Or no, sorry, I looked at that wrong. 10-20. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it already about to pin on the plate in that short amount of time. That's pretty decent. I like it. And then let's see. This is ORYD, so that would be oatmeal, rice, yeast, dextrose. Um, this done pretty well. This is Indiana Wild Reishi that I cloned. This is the first transfer off the clone plate. Even coming from the wild, man, it really ate this up. I liked it. Here's some Piapino. Piapino grows out really fast, and it's always, I don't care what media you put it on, I don't care what grain you put it on, it's gonna be kind of fluffy. That's just its morphology. That's what it does. Kind of like lion's mane's always light and wispy. That's just what Piapino does. If you put it on, and I mean, it's not like feathery, but it's just not like that super dense reishi growth, or and this is SRD, which would be sorghum rice dextrose, and 0.1 grams of peptone for 500 milliliters. Did really well. Piapino is very fun to grow, really easy. Soup Piapino is really easy to grow. As easy as the blue oyster. Yeah, pretty much grow in any conditions. You don't have to do anything special. You can basically completely neglect it. And as soon as you see the first couple little pins on the top of the bag, lop it off, fruit it. Really easy. I've side fruited it too, and I don't really like it. They do really well when you case them too. Case them with a little bit of, pasteurized guar. They do really well. You get several flushes if you case them, because it doesn't let them dry out. Where otherwise I'd get like 2 flushes and, fill a bag in compost. I can get like 3 good ones, and if I wanted to go a 4th because I didn't have something else to put in its place, it would still produce some mushrooms, enough that it would be worth the utilities it costs to do it, That's other things to think about, like, is what I'm doing worth what it costs me to do? Is what I'm doing worth the hassle? Your experiments, that's like, you just automatically consider that you're going to break even or it's a loss. And then when it does good, it's like, oh, right on. Now I can start adapting that into, my normal, and then really compare, with large amount. And then GLMY, that is grits, light malt extract, and yeast. Lion's mane is a wispy mycelium. This, at no higher rate than anything else I use, 2 to 2.5%. 10-20. I mean, usually lion's mane is like little wisp you can barely see across the plate with like a good concentric ring, a good center ring. Lion's mane is just light and wispy. That's what it does. That's pretty dense. I mean, it liked it. Did far better than I think I did a PDA for the other plates when I pulled these transfers. This is going to be made into spawn here. Then this is Northspor's lion's mane. Good culture. But yeah, it's like these different little experiments and the way things respond and the way that I rotate. When I rotate through to other media, because I mean, this is a T1 off of, my long-term storage. That piece there is from long-term storage. I'll probably make a master grain bag with, a quarter of this plate, and then I'll make 3 other plates, take 3 small transfers, and then I'll just put this up. You know, it'll be ready to do the same thing over again. Um, you know, when I get out like T3 and T4 from my storage, you know, at the storage point, it's probably never really more than a T2 or T3. Sometimes I put things in storage at T1 if they're clean, you know, and you should. I mean, you want the youngest version. Um, but I mean, there's a lot of expansion here that can be done, you know, so that good, healthy growth doesn't matter what other media I put it on, you know, it's just going to develop more enzymes and then go to my, you know, grain or, you know, whatever. When I get out like T3 and T4, though, I will not make a master bag and do grain to grain expansion. With like a T1 like this, I will definitely do grain to grain expansion with a master jar or master bag because it's young enough, it's healthy enough. Um, the more I expand it, though, it's going to go straight into the grain that's going to go in a bag. That's something else to think about. You know, what is your experience? How far will you run out in your T numbers? I will run out to like T6, you know, before I go back to long-term storage, as long as it's still growing well and doing, you know, performing. Obviously, if not, then you go back to long-term storage. But I've noticed with like chestnut, I can go a long way out and they still do okay. Whereas like the Columbinas, the blue oyster, it doesn't do that well when I get out at like T6 or T7. It really starts to change in morphology. How it fruits, you know, is not nearly aggressive or nearly as aggressive. Just little things, and it could be my culture. You know, yours might not do that. More things to talk about, like, you know, where did it originate from? Have you ever taken it back to spore? Just a lot, you know. The gourmet people, a lot of them keep everything close, you know. They keep it under their hat. Everything's proprietary, you know. It's taken me a long time to learn all the things that I have. And I want to share them, you know, like, why does it have to be proprietary? You know, like, come on, man, it's information, it's knowledge. It should not cost you money. It should be available. A lot of mine came from literature, you know, because a lot of gourmet people don't want to share other than here's how you prep grain, you know. This is a media recipe. This is how master's mix is made. This is what your humidity and fresh air exchange should be. Good luck, you know. It's like there's there's a lot to learn, you know. And the two communities need to exchange more information. There's a big disconnect, and there's so many things from both communities that apply. So think about it, guys. Anyways, primitive mycology. Hope you enjoyed the rant. I'm out.